Hello, I'm Rory McKiernan and welcome to the Love and Courage podcast. Huge thanks for tuning in and a special thanks to all you podcast patrons who chip in on a once-off or on a regular basis. It all matters. It's all appreciated. It all helps build our community of listeners all over the world and bring these inspirational voices for change to new listeners. And if you want to support the podcast, you can head over to loveandcourage.org. It takes just 1 minute. You can do so now or after listening to this great episode. And $5, €5, 10, 20, whatever you can. If it's either on a once-off or on a monthly basis, it is all appreciated. You can also support by leaving a review on Apple or whatever podcast platform you use and by spreading the word on social media or wherever you can. And thanks to everyone for all the support for my new book, Hitching for Hope, A Journey into the Heart and Soul of Ireland. It's been getting a great response and great reviews. Got to the top of the charts, so big thanks to everyone who got behind it. And you can find out more about the book at hitchingforhope.com if you don't know about it or haven't seen it already. It's available from most bookstores and online retailers, and it's also available as an ebook and an audiobook. Again, reviews really help it get out there, so if you have read it and enjoyed it, please do send a review to Amazon, Goodreads and Google Books. It takes just a few minutes and massively appreciate all the support. Now, this episode, my guest is Ibrahim Halawa. Ibrahim is a 25-year-old law student from Tallaght in Dublin, Ireland. Between the ages of 17 and 21, he was wrongfully imprisoned in an Egyptian prison after being arrested during a family visit to Cairo. The trip coincided with pro-democracy protests which had swept the country and led to hundreds of civilians being killed by the forces of the military-led government of General el-Sisi. I was involved in the campaign to free Ibrahim from prison, and it was great to finally get the chance to talk with him about his experiences, his insights, and his incredible and harrowing and inspirational story. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Ibrahim Halawa. Ibrahim, thanks so much for joining me on the Love and Courage podcast.
Thank you so much, Rory, for having me. It's been long overdue, and I'm finally glad that we can do this now.
Yeah, it's interesting how time goes, isn't it? Like we've been in touch over the years, and I was just checking through some old emails and saw like a lot of campaign related emails to when you were in prison going back 5 years and you know it just really caught me in the moment to think that how time has flown by. Do you have a sense of that yourself?
To be honest, I obviously do, because I'm comparing the both sides of time. Where, you know, I used to always write when I was inside, I used to always write that time was your worst enemy. But, you know, since ever being released, time has gone by so fast, and I'm just like, you know, slow down. I still want to catch up on life. Like it's been going so slow when I was inside, but I'm still glad that I'm on the other side, living every moment. And, you know, it's difficult times that we're living in, and there's a global pandemic, and it's not easy for everyone. It's not easy for me. It's triggering a lot of emotions, but yet again, I'm glad, and I have to appreciate every moment.
So you strike me as somebody that has a perspective of gratitude in your life, you know, and that's one of the reasons I was curious to talk to you, because obviously most or many people who have been through something similar to you wouldn't necessarily be sitting here with a smile on their face, you know, embracing life. Like it's very hard to. I'm not suggesting that you've overcome, but certainly you strike me as someone who's been able to process or manage. Or can you give me a bit more insight into that?
Definitely. Well, to be honest, I'm gonna be straight up honest. Like, it wasn't easy for me. I came out of prison and I was expecting one thing, and if I'll be honest with you, it wasn't like I expected it at all. I did not. You know, I wasn't prepared for the media. I wasn't prepared to go out. I just wanted to go out and continue my normal life that was on pause. But there's many aspects that happen when you're first released, is that you constantly think that life will continue from where you stopped off. Because, you know, when you're in prison, these are the only memories that you have created of life outside. So you link everything back to those memories. But when I was released, it was not the same. And that's where I kind of got a shock at the start. And I had to overcome that and process all of that with the media and process all of that with moving on with life. You know, I was a child, and there I am next. I'm expected to get my college degree, work a job, become a man in less than 1 year, it was overwhelming, and it was very scary. But, you know, there's nothing to kind of waste time on and start worrying and start dwelling over it. There's no time in life to do that. And I am grateful, and I have a lot of gratitude, because, there's still people in there. There's still people in worse conditions. There's still people suffering daily in their own life. But I'm happy, and I always will remain happy, because I always say to my sisters, like, when they have problems, I was like, just think that it could always be worse, but also deal with your problem. Don't ignore it. And that's where I started off with I started to deal off with my problem once I discovered that, I have a problem. And that was step number one. I needed to discover that there's something not right here, and that I need to get my life straight. And I done that slowly but surely, but I got there in the end, hopefully. Like you said, you never overcome. I won't lie to you and say, it's over, it's done with. No, that's a lie. It doesn't happen like that. It's triggering. And like we were just saying, that today's, is the day that all the events started taking place in Egypt in 2013, and it's triggering a lot of memories, and that will constantly happen. But it's not, it's not ignoring them. It's learning how to deal with them, learning how to overcome them, and that's what I believe in 100%.
Do you have a sense that prison taught you some of this about how to survive?
To be honest, definitely. I was a free man. I was such a youngster who never like any other youngster who never liked to stay at home. I like to go out. I like to move. I like advocating. Even before before prison, I always said that I was never going to get an office job ever. I can't stay in one place. I need to move. I need to speak to people. I need to meet new people. But here I am working an office job now, and life moves on, and studying, and you expect things. And prison definitely taught me a lot of lessons that I never expected that I would have one day. But one of the things definitely I think it clicked in my mind was to be grateful for the little things, and to be grateful with family time, and spend, and it's okay sometimes to cancel on your best friends to spend time with your family. Sometimes we feel that, they might not call us again, we might not go out with them again, they might leave us. Don't worry about your friends, worry about your family, because these are the people that stick with you by the end of the day. These are the people that, like I said, my sisters, I think everyone realized what great job my sisters have done protesting daily, and I'm very grateful for them. And to be honest, the least I can do is kind of stick back home and stay with them.
Yeah, I remember being in touch with your sisters, and I think they went on to receive some sort of national award for a campaign. Didn't they?
Yeah, the Irish Tallaght Women's Award. Yeah, I was very proud of them, to be honest. I was still it was such a great timing, because I was only released as well. So it was great to be there and witness that myself. Definitely, it would have been great to get the news if I was inside that, they've achieved such a thing, because they deserve it. But being there in the moment was totally different, and it's a memory that I will hold forever.
So some people watching or listening to this, we're going to be putting this out as a video and audio, but can you talk to the listeners who maybe don't know your backstory and some of how you ended up in Egypt, and how you ended up in prison, and what your whole family situation and your background and that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. So I was born and raised in Ireland, Fairhouse. I was a Tallaght boy. So I was born and bred here, but I always say this, that I was always taught to stand up for human rights. Where Ireland has history for standing up for their own rights. It's been so recent, so we've always been listening to it. It's always been in the back of our minds. But when I put what I've learned into practice, somehow it was a big crime for me. With all what people were saying, but I was only 13, and I don't regret anything that I've done, because it was in 2013. I was only 17. But I was still a young lad, and I went to Egypt for my summer holidays, and it was just right after my leaving cert. I haven't seen my family, my extended family in Egypt for a very long time, because at the time there was the revolution as well in 2011, and that was taking place. So things weren't kind of calmed down in Egypt until 2012, because there was an elected president. But I have summer friends that I go see every month who live in the same estate that I know, and they're in the same situation as I am. And they were shot in 2013 in the protests. And for me, that just didn't make sense. It didn't add up. I didn't care who was in power. And, I got attacked on the Late Late Show for saying, we were at the cinema, and then we ended up in a protest. But for me, kind of saying that, it was kind of just to give people a brief idea of how things were so normal 2 days before it. It wasn't like an event that, we walked out of the cinema on a protest. No, I'm saying that the same place that I was at the cinema in, there was a protest the next day. So if Dundrum Cinema, you watch a movie yesterday and a protest takes place, you're explaining of how easy and calming the situations were. But when my friends were shot, I understood that no, something's not adding up. Something for me as a young lad is you can't shoot people for simply calling for their rights, even if you're against it, even if you don't believe in it. And that's where I kind of needed to stand up and say, no, I'm from a democratic background. I know this. I've been taught this my whole life. I know what democracy is, and I know what a ballot box is, and people who put their vote in. That's all I know about voting. It's simple. Walk up to the box, put your vote in, and a person comes to power. But if I want someone to be removed from power, it's the people's choice. It's not the army's choice. It's not the military's choice. And unfortunately enough, in kind of like in the Middle East and in the Arab world, and that's why the Arab uprising happened, because the military was so rooted in power that it just wanted to control. And even when I was speaking to the officers inside prison, they were always like, it's our country. We're the ones who give blood. We're the ones who fight in the field. Yes, but you've chosen that job to serve and protect your people. And that was kind of the reason you chose that specific job, not for you to take power by force. And hence why, I protested peacefully. I went through trial for 4 years without being convicted of any crime. No evidence was given against me. And I'm sorry, like if Egypt arrested me, they would have provided evidence if there was against me. There is no like common sense in them not providing evidence and then just releasing me after 4 years. It would even at least make their image look like, oh, he did a crime, so he's serving his time. But like, no, he's going to go through a mass trial with 4 years and we're not going to release him. So it just spoke volumes of the judicial system in Egypt. And I got a lot of backlash for that because, a lot of people were saying, the Muslim, he's part of the Muslim Brotherhood, or I was part of no organization. And, I felt very sad that I had to sit on the Late Late Show and justify myself that I'm not part of any organization. I'm not lying. I am who I am. I'm a 17-year-old who took part because I seen something so simple. It's like kind of like the Black Lives Matter protests. When people kind of cover it up with, everyone in America are looters and, they're all robbing stores and no, there's no protesters out in the street. It was kind of exactly the same. They were, not like, I'm not comparing two groups, but I'm just saying that it's the situation people were putting me in, that Ibrahim was committing violence. No, certainly because some people were doing something that I wasn't part of them. There was a larger scale that people wanted democracy in Egypt. And if you read and if you are, you are following up what's happening in the Middle East and the Arab countries, you understand that these people are willing to give up their life just for voting and just for, to have their voice heard and, free education, free healthcare. They want that. They need a country. Because if you go there, you can see, the amusement parks, you can see the beautiful scenery in the tourist places. But when you go down to the slums in the country, it's horrible and people are suffering. People are dying from corona because, no hospitals want to accept them and they don't want to deal with it. Even there was just a famous video of a guy who was one of the biggest supporters of el-Sisi, who was at the time, and he came out and he said, my mom died of corona, I'm dying of corona, and I regret ever supporting you. And he was giving out because he was so frustrated from the situation that Egypt has reached such a stage. I wasn't in support of any president. I didn't say this guy or this guy. I said I'm supportive of democracy. That's what I know back home. And that's, democracy wasn't only made for Ireland. Democracy is the method that we followed, and it should be brought around the world for everyone to live in peace. And I couldn't understand why that was such a crime for me to kind of speak to people about it. And let's contemplate, let's understand each other. Why can't we just live in peace? Why can't people choose who they want to stay in power and who to be removed from power? Why does it need to be forced upon us? And that was kind of why I paid my time for that.
And so talk to me about the actual protest and the events that led to you getting arrested and what followed from there.
So in 2013, I arrived in Egypt. Like I said, I went out with my friends. I didn't know what was going on. I remember even my sister talking to me at the time about protests, and I said, I'm not interested. Like, I just came out with the leaving, so I want to relax from my exams. Like, and it was Fatima as well. I keep telling her that. I keep saying, remember that time you spoke to me? Like, how I was so naive. I didn't understand what was going on in the world. But like I said, people started taking to the streets around 30th of June, and I just kind of started to listen to the people of Egypt. You go down to coffee shops, you see people speaking about it. It's a very warm feeling when you go down to coffee shops in Egypt. You can just talk to anyone, and that kind of made me feel comfortable, where I can just go down, sit with my friends, talk, and we were doing that. And they started to explain to me that there's this guy in power, there's this military that wants to take over, and then they started protesting, and then they were shot dead, with all the number of people that were shot dead in the start. And I went out bawling, crying. I remember that night very well. And my sisters were crying, and we were just home, and we were saying, we were speaking to our mom, because my mom flew over because she knew it wasn't too safe. So she needed to hold us until we come back and book our tickets back. And she stayed with us in our living room at the time, and we started crying. We said, "Mom, why is this happening? It never happens. Why is it such a crime for people to kind of ask for such a simple right, and they need to be killed for it?" And we were so devastated that night. And like I would say, we still recall it. We still recall it to this day. But yeah, sorry. And then I took down to the streets to protest, to say that this is wrong. I'm going to be flying back to Ireland. But as a person of experience of democracy, and knowing that you can live in peace under democracy, and that the larger people choose who to get in power, and you can still live happily ever after without any clashes, without any killing, without any oppression. And that's exactly what my crime was to the Egyptian government. At the time, or I don't like to call them the government, but let's speak political terms. They are the overpowered government at the time. And I was in the streets, and then they started shooting so much people. I can still picture it right now. I was standing in the street, me and my sisters, and we ran to the side, and people were just dropping, literally just dropping. And everyone started running back, and we were like, okay, where are we going to run? Where is the safest place? Because we know that we were surrounded around the whole area, and they locked the train station. They didn't let anyone leave. And my sister Fatima was the first to run in the mosque. So Fatima ran into the mosque, and then I ran after her straight away with my other sisters. And all I was caring about at that moment was, I need to bring my sisters to safety. I don't care how, but that needs to happen. And then suddenly we all go into the mosque, and all the protesters go into the mosque. And here's me again, being naive, thinking that this is a place of worship. No matter how much, political clashes happen, no, places of worship are sacred. And there's a series of events where I constantly am so naive, and such a 17-year-old that, I keep thinking, for example, that, I haven't committed a crime. Let's protest peacefully. Let's hide in the mosque. It's sacred. They won't attack us. Let's go through trial. Let's go to the prosecutor's office. I haven't committed a crime. He will let me out. Even if the police system are corrupt, the judicial system won't be corrupt, because they're meant to, they've worked so hard to reach to the position they are in, to be a judge, and to kind of, provide people fairness. And that wasn't happening, and provide people justice. And we were all locked up in the mosque the army, the military, and they were all combined with thugs. So they were working with thugs, and I'll explain to you that later on. I met a lot of those thugs in prison, and they were saying we were protesting. The military offered us drugs, and they gave us weapons and money to attack you guys. And if we did not give the weapon back, we were arrested. So a lot of them just ran off with the money and the drugs, and they didn't come back, and they were arrested again. And that's why I met them in prison. And I understood all of this system later on. I didn't know any of this. I just thought, these people want to hurt us. They just don't like us. And the mosque shut the doors. They closed the door on us, and they cut all water from. There was a tap inside the mosque. They cut water. And they didn't provide us with any food whatsoever, and they didn't provide us with any medical care, because there were people who were injured, who were shot, who ran straight to the mosque. I remember even I had filmed I had grabbed an iPad, and I was broadcasting for Al Jazeera, because I wanted to show that we are, there's none of us in the mosque that have any weapons, and there's none of us that are harmful, and this is all happening to us. And there was a lady who they shot tear gas in a small room beside the mosque, so they were two connected, and that lady suffocated to death. And I filmed her. I still remember to this day. I put the iPad on her, And I said, look at this, like all she needed to save her from the suffocation was an injection because, tear gas, it's illegal. And like, even me being naive, the first time I ran into tear gas, I was running into tear gas and everyone was running back. And I said, like, why is everyone running back? Like, it's only tear gas. It's meant to only make you cry. Like, I only thought that's what tear gas does. But it burns you. It burns your eyes. It burns your skin. And you cannot breathe. You can die literally from just taking it in, consuming it. And I was filming all of this, and then they shut electricity. So the iPad, I couldn't charge the iPad. And the minute that electricity shut and the iPad shut down, they attacked the mosque. They shot bullets into the mosque. They shot tear gas into the mosque. So you can imagine that, a closed area, and they're shooting tear gas into a closed area, and they have control of the doors. So you purposely are going to die there. All the protesters started pushing the doors open. They wanted to get out, pushing the doors open. And they were prepared. So they had a square of police soldiers serving army time. So they were there, and they had weapons pointed at us. And you had to get down to the ground. It was like, it's like exactly what you see in like happening between Israel and Palestine. It's exactly just weapons pointed at us for no reason. And then we all went out. I got shot a bullet at that moment in my hand, and I was bleeding, and I didn't know where my sisters were because I couldn't breathe. The mosque was, it was full of tear gas. My sisters ran out of the mosque, and they said their part where they were sexually harassed. They were grabbed from parts of their body from all the thugs that were outside. Remember, I told you there was thugs outside the mosque. So they were just grabbed by so many people, and I didn't know where they were. I thought they were either dead or they just disappeared. I didn't know. And I was taken, and I was taken out to the street, and I was left there. And then the officer hit me with the back of his AK-47, and he said, "Stay there." So I stayed there for like half an hour, and then they put me into the tank. And after the tank, came like a high-ranked officer, and he said to me, who are you? And I said to him, I'm Ibrahim. I have this. This is my Irish passport because I had my Irish passport because that's the only identification. I had my Irish passport, and I had the Institute of Education ID in Leeson Street. These were the only two IDs I had. And he said, "Oh, so you're an Irish citizen?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Do you speak Arabic?" So obviously, I didn't think it was a crime to say that I speak Arabic. And I said, "Yes, I speak Arabic." The minute I said I speak Arabic, he closed the door, as if it's like, "Oh, well, you speak Arabic, then you're not really an Irish citizen. You're also one of us, so we can abuse you too." So he closed the door. I was put from that from that army tank. I was taken and put into a police van with about 30 to 35 people at that time, and it was the hottest weather in Egypt, and it's all metal, and everyone's breathing, and we couldn't breathe. And then they drove off with us into the desert, into a military camp. And I don't want to take like too long going into detail because it's 4 years, but this is where I first encountered my sisters, and they just said, "We need you for 5 minutes. We're going to do a security background check." And again, I am naive, and I say, "Okay, I have nothing. I've never committed a crime. Security background check, and then we'll let you go, because sometimes between the protesters there can be bad people." And I said, "Definitely." But all is that we were thrown into a cell. I see my sisters, but I can't see my third sister, Sumaya. And I start crying because all I think about is that she's dead. Like, she got shot and she's dead. So I start crying, and I say, "Listen, I need to see my sister. I need to know where she is. At least I can go home and tell my dad something. At least I can tell my parents something." And, this is all coming back. And then she, we were all crying. They were in front of me with other women as well. I think there was about 50, 60 women. All the women were released, but because we said that we are Irish citizens, we remained. Because, it has brought to us by many sources, and I don't want to mention names, that Sisi wanted to negotiate some sort of deal with the president at the time in the Taoiseach. I'll hand you back your citizens, you provide me such. And that's how politics work. I'm sorry. That's how it works back in the Middle East. That's how it works in Arab countries. That's how it always, they take prisoners and they negotiate for something. It's been a strategy for humans forever. And I was meant to be presented on the prosecutor, but I wasn't even presented on the prosecutor until 4 days. So I should be arrested and presented on the prosecutor. And if he wishes to renew me 4 days, he renews for me 4 days under trial. But I was imprisoned 4 days, and then I was renewed I was renewed 15 days on the prosecution, which leaves me to ask, where was the first day where I was meant to be presented on prosecuted? So I was meant to be presented on the 1st and then on the 4th. And then again after the first 15 and so on. But I wasn't even presented on the 1st.
Yeah, I recall there were so many collapsed trials or trials that never happened.
There were so many.
Constantly
there were so
new
many
dates present. Yeah,
exactly. There were so many illegal things that were being done.
And I suppose in the background was the kind of foreign affairs dynamics around Egypt being under scrutiny for human rights in the European Union, and then I don't know, there was talk of like beef and beef export deals between Ireland and Egypt and so on. But I mean, we could get pulled into all of that. And I'm kind of mindful also that at the same time, there were certain people in Ireland creating other stories around all of this, weren't there? There were like essentially what you might call a smear campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there was people definitely who were, like I remember at the first time the controversy of Ibrahim ripped up his Irish passport, which I like, if you have a card to save you, or if you have a boat to save you, you're not going to sink the boat for absolutely no reason. My Irish passport was the only identification and the only thing to prove that I'm Irish, and the only thing that I can provide to the prison authorities that I'm Irish, because even my sisters didn't have any identification at them at the time, because we were just all robbed. We were, imagine being sexually harassed. So if you're sexually harassed, they're not going to rob your purse. But I kept my passport, was the only thing safe. I remember I had the iPhone 4S at the time, and that was robbed. My money was robbed, but I had to keep onto my passport because I knew that was the thing that was going to save me. And after the 4 days, we met up with the prosecutor. He didn't allow us to see a lawyer. He didn't allow us to see the embassy at the time. And he put a sheet in front of me and he said, "These are 19 charges against you." And I said to him, like, I laughed, like hysterical. I went into hysteria. Like I started saying like murder, attempted murder, robbing a tank. Like the period of the protest was so short that you couldn't even commit all of those crimes if you wanted to. Like murdering 210 people, like that's on a whole nother level. And then after that, burning and robbing a tank and robbing stores or whatever, they just created the list and they handed it to the 500 people. I was speaking to one of the lawyers and I was telling them how funny it is, because during when we were in the mosque, they opened in front of their media, they opened a safe passage for everyone to be released, right? If you're going to open a safe passage and you're calling that everyone in the mosque is a criminal, well, if you're opening a safe passage, it's very likely that the criminal walks out in the safe passage. I think we see this in movies and we see this everywhere, where the criminal just walks out between the people. But the thing is, like, I went out to see that safe passage and all the thugs gathered around me. I said to him, I said to the officer at the time, "How do you expect me to bring out my sisters and they're just going to be sexually harassed in this environment?" And then that's later on straight away they attacked. So what I'm saying is I attached my passport to that. He said, "I need your Irish passport to identify that you are Irish and for you to get consular visits, and also to prove that you are underage, because I don't have any identification for you to prove that you're underage." And he stapled it to my file. And that was the last I seen on my passport. And it popped out of nowhere that Ibrahim burned his passport. Like, if Ibrahim threw it away, if Ibrahim done something, no, Ibrahim burned his passport. Ibrahim is doing... And it was very sad and it killed me, to be honest, because I was in a cell there thinking that, I'm doing what Irish people taught me. I'm doing what I've learned my whole life. Stand up for people who are being oppressed. Stand up for those who need a voice. And I don't regret it. And I won't ever regret it. And no, if the whole world stands against me, Rory, I won't regret it. But it was just so sad to see that. You get me? I'm 18 or 19 in a cell, celebrating all the celebrations, my birthday, away from my family, away from my country. And I don't even feel like I am Egyptian at the time, because you get me, I only go to Egypt for summer holidays. I never really understood the culture or the people or who they are until I started living with them in those cells. So there I am feeling like, why is everyone back home thinking that I'm like that? And, as much as there's great support and there was enormous support, but it's those little things that hurt you when you're doing something good. And I think you've seen it on Twitter. You've seen that, no matter how much you do, people they just always give their horrible opinion.
Yeah, I guess there was certainly a distinct current of Islamophobia creeping through, and there seemed to be like a conflation around the role of your father, who I don't know the full detail, but it seems like he's relatively prominent as a cleric. Is that correct?
Yeah, so my father is the imam of the Clonsky Mosque. But even that, like, to be honest, like, Rory, you're doing a podcast. So when I come judge you, I judge you based on the work you've done. I don't say Rory's father done this. It's what you've created for your own self. I was 17 at the time. I didn't get to create a legacy for myself. I didn't create any path for myself yet. I was still scraping onto my road. And you know, there are all these people attacking me based on this or based on this guy. Or, you know, when I was on the Late Late Show, they found a very far guy to bring up on to attack me with. And there's no linkage between me and him. But it's just that, you know, Ibrahim Halawa, he's not white. And I'm going to be honest and straightforward about it. You're not white. You're not blonde. You don't have blue eyes or colored eyes. I'm sorry, you can't be Irish. Because we are the first, like my generation, we're kind of the first mostly appearing generation of like, you know, you can be Irish and brown. So it was very new. And I understand that there was this culture shock to people, but you don't have to be hateful about it. You don't have to be bitter about it. And that was very sad because, you know, I grew up and constantly like, that didn't only appear after prison. Like I said, constantly growing up, it was always go back home, go back to your country, go back to your country, go back to your country. And it's my country. I was born here. But come on, like, okay, I'm the second generation of like our people. But like my nieces and nephews, like this is 25 years later, they're born here and they're being told. She came the other day to her mom and she said, I was in school and someone told me go back to your country. Like, when is this going to become like, when is this even going to end?
And how young is your niece and...
She's 8. She's 9. My niece is like my biggest nephew is 10.
And she's getting that from other children who are picking it up from parents.
Their parents, exactly. Like, I don't get it. Like, we're the ones who created borders, but not only that, it's exactly like when I was in prison. I used to always tell my fellow prisoners, they've taken our freedom and they've built walls. Let's not build our own walls within ourselves. You know, we've created borders all around the world, but why are we creating these human borders that are not even visible? We're just putting them there in place for us to find excuses to hate each other, to abuse each other, to kill each other, to take power, you know, for petrol, for many reasons, for money, for gold. We're just killing and abusing. And that wasn't me. And I'm not going to be like that ever. You know, and people called me names. Let's speak honest about it. People called me names like a terrorist, or you know, he's a ticking bomb, and wait until this guy comes back, and wait until this guy. I'm sorry, like when the time came for all the ISIS people, they all fled to Syria to fight. You know, it's been 3 years, and I'm still here, and there's still nothing, and I'm still, you know, I went on, I got a job, I found myself a job. I started college and I'm studying law because I want to help and I want to change, and I will continue to do that. People, those negative comments do nothing but motivate me, because I have also a lot of people who support me and say great things and understand that, you know, you can be Irish and you can be brown. You can be Irish and, you know, you don't have to look a certain look or be a certain color or speak a certain way. There's no these little specifics that we put onto your CV of being Irish. Like, why are we putting them there? And I don't want to see my kids or my nephews or nieces suffer that, because it was very painful. It was very painful as a kid when I'm, you know, trying to become one of the other kids in school, and then some guy makes a joke of you, and everyone in the class starts laughing. You know, go back to your country, or you're a Paki. It's always been there. It hasn't changed, and I received it more in prison. And to be honest, like, when I talk about it, I say that the Islamophobia that appeared, I got it the most because I was the most person in the spotlight in Ireland as a Muslim at the time. So I received that. It has nothing got to do about my case. Yes, people are using my case as an excuse to bring out the bitterness in them, but the bitterness is in, because they're not attacking Ibrahim, they're attacking, you know, Islam, or they're attacking his Irishness. But they weren't attacking the details of the case, because if we came and sat down, me and him, and spoke facts about the case that I was in, there's legal papers, there's legal documentation, there's proof that I did nothing, there's witnesses that I've done nothing. If someone goes into trial in Ireland and he's proven innocent after 4 years without a trial, without any witness, without evidence, he can sue the country for incarceration.
So
when
when you're spending all this time in prison, Ibrahim, and you're aware of some of this, what's going on in the background, and there's a continual flow of cases not proceeding and like almost false hopes emerging, how did you maintain a sense of hope and not actually fall into a despair?
To be honest, I have to say, first of all, my family. Also I believe in God, so I was kind of my strength worshipped. And I always say this, like, if you don't ever believe in God and you go into prison, believe in something, because you need to speak to someone, you need to speak to something to kind of just let it out there. But I started writing, and I always go by a quote. It says, that people cry tears, but writers cry, they cry ink. And I love that, because I can just explain my feelings and my situation and writing. And I always say that, like, at the time, I was just out of English paper 1 and English paper 2. And I just did, I wasn't a writer and I didn't know how to write, but I enjoyed them. And I started reading more. I started speaking to people as well, because when you see someone drowning, right? Or when you see someone in a problem, you can direct them from shore. You can tell them where the shore is. But when they're drowning, they only have one thing that they want to do. And they want to know how to breathe. They want to get up to the surface and grab a breath. But you're telling them the way out. So when people tell you their problem, you can help them. And sometimes you see your own problem by helping them. You sometimes listen to them and say, oh, I feel similar and I think this should be done. So when you give them the solution, you feel that, oh, this also applies to me, so I should do it. And we were sharing that. You're with people 24/7 in a cell. I think that you'd find everything to speak about. Also, like I said, my sisters, the Irish people definitely helped. The Irish government helped. I'm going to say in the second half. I'm not going to say in the first half. I have to give credit to the people who helped. And even if there is political differences, even if that doesn't mean that I neglect the right for them helping me. I wouldn't be a good human being if I did that, just because I have political differences. Lynn Boylan as well. Lynn Boylan, like, she's my hero. I look up to her, and still she's like an older sister to me. If I have a problem, I go to her and I say to her, Lynn, look, I'm having this problem or I'm suffering. And my lawyer, Dara Kenny, as well. I say to him, he gives me so much advice. He checks up on me regularly. These are the people that kind of like definitely kept me going when I was inside, especially when Lynn visited me in prison. I just felt like, the Taoiseach doesn't want to do that. No one wants to do that. And here's this lady with my lawyer risking her life to come see me in prison. Like, this gives you some sort of hope, no matter what. Also writing letters. People wrote letters to me a lot. A lot of them were confiscated. Birthday cards, they were confiscated. But knowing that I'm receiving that much support was just very helpful. And that's why I always say, let's support people that are in need. When people were jumping, on the Black Lives Matter protesting and saying, it's not fair. This happens in Palestine. I said, I wrote this on Twitter and I wrote this on Instagram. It's not fair that we neglect the Black people mourning their problem. They have the right to mourn. They have the right to feel pain. It's been going on for so long. We need to support them at the time. It doesn't mean that Palestine doesn't happen anymore. It says, there's so much problems happening on in the world. We need to tackle each problem. But when it's time for, as humans, we need to break that barrier that, okay, I'm only specialized in this case and I'm only going to help this case and I'm only going to... That's not your job as a human. Your job as a human to help everyone in need at any time.
And do you feel that we're in this kind of new moment of race and reckoning right now? Do you feel optimistic about that? Do you feel like things are out of all the injustice and the protest and the sense of how would you say? Maybe like there could be a fatigue emerging from the Trump era, but certainly like the uprising of predominantly peaceful protests. Do you get a sense of energy from that and hope?
Yeah, I do. To be honest, and it feels great that like we can finally speak about this. And I think when when it rises to the surface and kind of we can say that this is happening, we feel that we can finally breathe and say that, guys, this has been going on for very long. Yes, now there's people dying from it and it's become clear to you, but let's educate ourselves. And that was kind of the thing that I liked about people owning the narrative this time. In the Black Lives Matter protests, the number one thing that everyone was saying was educate yourself, educate yourself, educate. It's not bad that if I don't know something about a certain situation, or if I don't understand how people are feeling, that I go read about it, that I go understand their perspective. And if I don't agree with it, I say respectfully why I don't agree with it. I don't have to be hateful. I don't have to be bitter. I don't have to be aggressive. We have to let people live. We have to let people, like Ireland has changed over the last, 20 years that 25 years that I've been alive. Like it was a very religious state, and we've become very left, and we've become very open, and we've become very understanding to many, many people. And I love that. And I love that people are starting to understand that people are being abused because of their race. There's people being abused because 1, 2, and 3. And we should bring this to schools. It shouldn't be only on Twitter. It shouldn't only be on, I remember at the time, when I was in primary school, it was give racism the red card. And that was, I would have liked to see that follow up and that move on forward, and people kind of listen to that. But people had to die for people to start to listen. And that, us humans only start moving when people start dying, because of what we see on social media. Death has become so normal. What we see on social media, abuse has become so normal. Oppression has become so normal. And we need to understand that it's not normal. And for me, kind of like, it was like, it's exactly the same. When I was in prison at the start, hearing people scream and being tortured was the worst thing for me. But then later on, you're going to have to live your life, and you're going to have to adapt and just, live, because constantly you're hearing people scream and being tortured. But I was always reminding myself that this is not normal. If I was eating and someone started, getting tortured outside, I would leave my food. Even though I wasn't being affected, but I needed my brain to understand that this is not normal, and I will not accept that whatsoever. I would sit in the corner. I would tell people, like, let's stop eating. A guy is suffering, no matter what his crime is, no matter what, he shouldn't be suffering as a human. Taking one guy's freedom is enough. It's enough pain. He's away from his family. I don't have to beat him. I don't have to torture him. I don't have to electrocute him. I don't have to whip him. For what? To prove that I have some power and authority. But like I said, in the end of the day, Ireland has become very open to these discussions, and we've become very open to have these panels. And I like that. And I like seeing so many people being supportive. And, we're dominating that hateful voice, and we're taking over that. And we need to own our own narrative and explain to people that, you can't say that. You can't say the N-word, even if it's in good terms, or even you can't say it. It's wrong and it's not acceptable. You can't say slurs like, it was always said to us, like, growing up, you're packy. You can't say that anymore. It's not normal. People need to feel like if you're saying that, you will be caught out. You'll be caught out on video. Back in the day, there was no video, there was no social media. But I'm sorry, I will put you on social media if you're doing that, because you need to understand them. You need to be, you need to learn your lesson.
Yeah, I suppose where it gets very deadly serious is for all human beings, but particularly when you think of your 8-year-old niece, that all children being equal and never having a choice in life to go any direction, and suddenly they're being affected by all of this hate that is flowing. And I think there are many positive dimensions to social media, but certainly I think we both agree that there are a lot of negativity and a lot of darkness around social media that I suppose can be challenging to navigate. I mean, how do you, at the moment, are you just someone who blocks everything, or how do you kind of regulate a lot of that?
I have a different perspective to that. Like, I don't run away from problems. I need to solve them. And even if I'm having a discussion with my sister and it kind of gets heated, or normal discussions with people, I always say, let's talk it out, because just keeping it in the back of your mind is not going to solve it. It's going to trigger. And I think this quarantine made us realize that once we have a lot of time, a lot of things from the back of our mind start popping up. Start memories, start problems that we had at a certain stage. And I believe they never get resolved until you resolve them, until you know how to deal with them. it's, I read something where it was explaining that when problems appear to you, it's not learning how to, overcome it, or it's learning how to deal with it. Once it happens and it's appeared to you, the next time you have to learn how to deal with it so it wouldn't hurt you, it wouldn't harm you. Some people feel that it's okay to block it, and it's okay just to, and I'm okay with that. Like, if you see someone hateful on Twitter, it's good to block people. And sometimes I engage in necessary engagements on Twitter just to prove to the people that, this is the systematic racism that happens. This is the systematic oppression that happens. Not because I want to engage in it, but I understand that. But I always take care of myself, and that's number one. And I'm starting to advocate a lot, Ray, on men's mental health. For me, that's number one. We've always been raised, stop crying, be a tough bloke, take it like a man. Even kids around you, if you're not strong enough, you don't fit in. No, a man has every right to cry. A man has every right to grieve. A man has every right to feel pain. And if we feel pain in our stomach, we take medication. If we feel pain in our arms or numbness, we take medication. But when it comes to the pain of the brain, we somehow neglect it, and it's like illegal for us to acknowledge that there's something wrong there and we need to take medication for it, whether it's legal, whether it's help professionally, or whether you feel something that you find comfort in, like exercise, or whether it's reading, or whether it's writing. But you need to figure out that I'm doing this because I need to solve some issue. I need to tackle this problem to overcome it, because especially for us men, and I've spoken to a lot of guys about this, that once they start to feel that there's a mental health problem with them, they neglect it. And after them neglecting it, they start to rise in other problems, in relationship problems, in problems with their kids. They're very aggressive. They don't want to listen. They don't want to. And you think that it's, oh, I'm very stressed, or, oh, I've had a hard day in work. It's not. It's your brain. Your brain is tired out. And you're not giving everyone the right. You're not giving your wife or your girlfriend or your friend, or you're not giving them your right of time, or just nice words, and because you constantly feel lonely, you constantly feel sad, you constantly feel down. And that's okay to acknowledge that that's something wrong with me. Sorry, there's a mental problem with me that I need to fix.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring this up, because I don't feel like these two situations are exclusive. The emergence of a lot of hate and division and toxicity ultimately, and then this kind of problem that many of us men, and I include myself in this, that we've grown up in a particular type of culture, whether it be Christian or Muslim or many other different traditions, where men haven't always had the space or support to delve into the emotional realm, which ultimately the worst case scenario that we see is a high prevalence of suicide, particularly in young men. So there's absolute evidence there. But I wonder that idea that we don't have the space and support, or don't open up to it, to receiving it also, that if it's not harnessed and it doesn't end up in addiction or despair or suicide, depression, it can also end up being channeled into toxic political narrative, that it finds an energy flow in trying to process itself through this kind of hatred thing that allows you to externalize your problems onto somebody else and say that it's Ibrahim or the Muslims or the Christian or the gay people or the Cavan people or the Limerick people or the Tallaght people.
Tallaght. Yeah, that's very true. It is. We're excuse, and that's exactly what I mean. Like, you need to tackle that problem before you bring it on to any other people. I mentioned relationships, you mentioned political systems, and that's very, very true. Like, we find this space to kind of just become hateful for absolutely no reason when we have a problem that we need to solve ourselves.
Yeah, I feel like I want to play some Bob Marley now. This is like, I feel like, I guess like I've always been drawn to reggae music for that reason. In as a young person, when I was growing up, I felt like reggae music spoke to that oppression and injustice in the world, but at the same time, they were able to navigate it and articulate it through this idea of one love. That let's get together and feel all right. So, I mean, I think that's I think no matter what...
I love that vibe about you, to be honest.
Well, you know, it is the Love and Courage podcast. So, and, you know, I kind of, I zoned in on that, on the word love and courage after actually speaking to an Oireachtas committee. It was a long time ago. It was, it could have been 10 or 15 years ago. I was giving a presentation to a bunch of TDs and senators on alcohol harm and drug harm, and because a lot of my background is in kind of youth development work. And I remember going away going, they kind of agree with me. I know they agree with me, but a lot of them aren't going to do anything about it, you know. And I feel like there's a political disconnect from the idea of a loving society and standing for love. And then the thing that we need to manifest that is the courage and the leadership and to speak out. And so to kind of reframe life in the language of love. And I think there can be a difficulty for lads and lad culture to even use the word love because it's seen as a female word.
It is. That's very true. Well, it is. And that's the thing, like, but I always go by, you know, a famous quote. It says, don't build your homes on people, because once they start walking away, your home will be gone with them. So I love the way you built your own podcast. That's your own home. You know, you wanted to change, and that's what we need to start doing. People feel that they're not confident enough to play their music on social media, or, you know, or do certain things where they feel comfortable and advocate upon it. We always expect people to do something for us. And, you know, it's 2020, where it's not as much of a, you know, jinx here it is, but there's still greatness within it. This quarantine could have been great for so many people to contemplate, to realize that maybe their career paths that they were following isn't them. Maybe they want to create a certain change, or, you know, sometimes it's also okay to realize that, no, I needed a break from life. Like, you know, there's everything stopped. Wars kind of stopped, or, you know, they didn't stop fully, but everything calmed down in life, and that the world needed to breathe. The world really needed to breathe. And I'm definitely an advocate of that. Own your own narrative, and, you know, create your own change. And I love the way you're doing that, to be honest. And I hope one day that I can do it. And that's why I'm starting to take my career, my legal career, to kind of, you know, speak on behalf of oppressed people. Because, you know, speaking as a human rights activist is one thing, but once you're speaking their language and speaking legal terms, they start to understand you. And that's why I wanted to do that. I wanted to study law. So when I say, sorry, you're breaking the law because this and this and this and this, that's what they need to listen to.
Bring it on, Ibrahim.
Thank you.
Listen, thanks so much for your time, and I wish you huge success in all your activism and in your work and in your studies.
Having me, and I never got around to thank you about the tickets as well for Body and Soul.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we were first in touch a few years ago. You weren't too long out of prison, were you, when you went to the Body and Soul Festival?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was really nice to see that.
Well, look at I think we all agree we need more festivals in the world. So hopefully when this pandemic is contained and over, we'll get back to some celebrations and get more music out into the world. So thanks again, Ibrahim.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Rory here again. Thanks for tuning in to the Love and Courage podcast. Please be sure to spread the word where you can and check out the archive of other great episodes. Big thanks to all you podcast patrons. And if you want to chip in, head over to loveandcourage.org, where you can chip in. It takes just a minute, either on a once-off or a monthly basis. All the support is appreciated. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time, here's to you and to the journey of creating a world based on love and courage.